start the recording and go to broadcast. So now, live, and we're going to wait for people to join in. Should be logging in. Look, first attendee is already here. Maybe one of you, though. Thought I could see the names. So I'll probably give a few minutes for people to join. I really don't want to look at my own face.
Oh, do you want to put in the PowerPoint?
Oh yeah, let me do that. I will share. Why is this not letting me?
I think you go to slideshow.
Yeah, slideshow, and a slideshow there. Question: are you seeing a slideshow on the webinar too? On Zoom? Or you? You log on to Zoom?
Yeah, I want to. Oh yeah, well, I see your screen, but it's like this, so.
Okay, so let me see if I can change. Title side, here we go. That's the one I want to share.
Yeah.
That's still not good.
No, it is.
Full screen? Okay, good.
Yeah, there's
It's
just
not very cool.
Yeah, I think so. Really?
Oh, actually.
Oh no, you're seeing the whole, this screen. Yeah. Slideshow.
Okay.
So share, I thought I could. Problem is it's sharing both screens. Maybe this screen. Yeah, you want to try something?
Yeah, do you want to mute it still?
Sure, give me a second.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to wait a few minutes until a few more people join, and then we'll get started. All right, again, we're going to wait about 2 more minutes and then get started.
Now before you get started.
Yeah.
But I'll let you know.
Okay. I'll have Slack open.
Yeah.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah.
Watching the chat. Okay, working. All right, let's just get going.
Yeah.
13.
Sounds good.
Stop share. All right, good morning, everybody. Oh, I'm muted. Good morning, everybody. My name is Oren Levine. I'm Director of Innovation here at the International Center for Journalism. journalists actually, and welcome to the first in a series of Dow Jones Truth Buzz webinars, sponsored by Dow Jones and Craig Newmark Philanthropies. Today we're going to be talking about the challenges for journalists in dealing with the phenomenon of information, both true and false information, spreading through WhatsApp and other chat apps. And we're privileged to have with us two experts in this area who've seen this phenomenon and dealt with it in their own countries. Shalini Joshi from India, who's been working with a number of projects around journalism and disinformation and misinformation, and especially the role of information on WhatsApp in the recent elections there. And Thay Nalon, who runs Os Fatos, one of the dominant fact-checking organizations in Brazil, who again had firsthand experience in the last Brazilian election, before and after, with increasing phenomena of information of all sorts being used by the tens of millions of people using WhatsApp in that country as well. And we were inspired to do this webinar because the three of us were in Tunis earlier this year at RightsCon, presenting a presentation on a similar subject. And the reaction to that was so positive, we thought we'd take the show on the road, in manner of speaking, and sort of try to share some of the experiences of our panelists with a wider audience through this webinar series. So when I want to start off, I'll start off with you, Thay. Just to give us a bit of background about what WhatsApp means in Brazil and what the role of it was in the recent elections.
WhatsApp. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm in Rio, so it's 10 something, so it is good morning.
Yeah.
WhatsApp's role in Brazilian election, it is difficult to measure the impact because private messaging systems, such as WhatsApp's, are closed, encrypted, and we don't know for sure how many people use it with political motivation, right? So at the end of 2017, our electoral court issued a series of regulation patterns for social media in order to give more transparency to political advertising during the political campaign. I don't know if you know that in 2018, we didn't only have presidential elections. We had local elections for the state level executive and legislative powers. So it was one of our largest elections to date. And the electoral court issued some rules for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other open social networks in order to them to give more transparency to political ads and in order to give more transparency to political speech. So political figures, candidates, they had to publicize who was paying for their ads, if the campaign was paying for the ads, and publicize for how long those ads would be displayed on social media. Facebook did that. Twitter chose not to disclose political ads during the elections, and that was it. The electoral court forgot about WhatsApp, which means that the political campaign found an unregulated platform in order for them to work and stimulate propaganda and make the any kind of supporters more engaged without any kind of limitation. And what happened was that a major role of the disinformation campaigns was weaponized by WhatsApp. And the results are that until today, we are in August 2019, and the government, which was elected last year with the misinformation campaign, using a misinformation campaign, still uses it in order to keep its supporters engaged.
So why do you think that of all the networks, why WhatsApp? Why is this such a popular channel for this, and why is it happening now, do you think, as opposed to in previous years?
I guess that there are some reasons we can only suppose, right? Because, well, it's difficult for us to find out what happens because groups are closed, conversations are encrypted, and it's not a problem per se, right? It's a matter of privacy. But if you weaponize privacy to promote hate or hatred or misinformation campaigns, well, we got a problem. But WhatsApp is used in Brazil for a huge amount of people. I don't have the numbers here, but it is something like, it's the second market in the world. It only loses to India. And we have some problems here regarding internet connections, internet data plans from the companies that provide this kind of service. Many of the plans that are sold by these companies, they enable users to use WhatsApp for free. And those plans, they are cheap. I mean, they are not cheap. Data plans with robust coverage in Brazil, they are expensive. So people tend to hire, to buy plans that have this WhatsApp for free capacity. It always also happens with Facebook. And which means that if you don't have enough data, you'll be able only to use WhatsApp and Facebook. So for many people in Brazil, WhatsApp and Facebook are the internet because they have free access to that, and they don't have access, or they have limited access for everything else. So for instance, you receive false information, you suspect it is a false information on WhatsApp, and you don't have data enough in your plan to fact check it for yourself. So WhatsApp doesn't provide any kind of tool for you to WhatsApp any kind of information. So you won't be able to verify if something's true or not. You'll be only able to receive or share it. Mm-hmm. It is a problem in Brazil. Besides that, we face a very serious issue about trusting institutions in Brazil, and the press is one of them. The press is really discredited and is being discredited by the government, and is a problem of trust. And what WhatsApp does, for instance, WhatsApp makes you, it brings you closer to your friends, to your family, and to people that are actually influential and that you trust, right? So if you receive any kind of message, false or true, from your friends or from your family or from a teacher or someone that is close to you and you trust, it will be much more value than from the press or the government or the politicians. Mm-hmm. And media outlets haven't used WhatsApp with a more serious take, a more professional take. So what happens is that there is a lack of professional, verified information inside WhatsApp, and there are plenty of misinformation that is driven not because they are bad actors, but sometimes your parents or your friends are not the authoritative figure to talk about, let's say, vaccination campaigns or public policy, or any kind of serious discussion that may or It would be better to have a professional talking about some specialist to talk about in order to be more trustworthy.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later. I want to go to Shalini. I think from what we're talking, you're nodding your head as if some of this sounds familiar. I'm curious about the experience in India and whether these trends that Ty is talking about are resonating there as well.
Yes, I think there are some similarities between India and Brazil. In terms of the number of people that are using WhatsApp in India, there's a recent government report that says that now there are 400 million active WhatsApp users in India. There are 485 million smartphone users in India. So almost everyone with a smartphone is now also using WhatsApp.
Wow.
And like Ty said, for Brazil, even in India, for a lot of first generation internet users, the internet is WhatsApp and Facebook. And there are also studies that indicate that the number of smartphone users and internet users will increase considerably in India, which means we'll have many more people accessing WhatsApp in this year and in the coming years. So WhatsApp is extremely popular because of various reasons. It's data light, it's simple to use. It's the most preferred way for most Indians to share multimedia, and also in the way that groups can be handled. And I'll come to that a little later, but an average Indian user is on multiple WhatsApp groups. These can be used for personal communication, so with friends and family, for exchanging just good morning messages every day, or sending out motivational quotes, sometimes jokes, or even sharing information, but also for professional exchange as well. So people coordinate teams, they share updates, and also more recently we've seen that for political propaganda, a number of political parties, major political parties, are using WhatsApp. In India, a large number of users, WhatsApp users, especially the first-time internet users, have also been susceptible to rumors on the app. So between the two general elections in India, the 2014 elections and the recently concluded 2019 elections, rumors on WhatsApp have led to incidents of violence, hate crimes, and people have also lost their lives because of these rumors that have spread on the app. What we can see now is that there are patterns of organized misinformation on WhatsApp. So messages that will build the same narrative again and again, sometimes in different languages and in different regions as well. For example, there was a text message about child kidnappers in one part of India, which also led to people being lynched and people losing their lives. But the same message about child kidnappers was seen in various other states in different languages as well. So one can see that in public health epidemics, where a pattern of misinformation is followed year after year. Well, in India, WhatsApp has also taken measures because of the incidents of violence that took place in the last 2 years. So WhatsApp has taken measures to control the spread of misinformation. There have been awareness campaigns. WhatsApp has also blocked potentially harmful and suspicious accounts regularly, and has partnered with fact checkers and civil society to address misinformation. And of course, last year there were research projects that were commissioned to see how misinformation spreads on WhatsApp. So the number of fact-checking initiatives have also increased in India, and Facebook has the highest number of fact-checking partners in India. Yet there are problems because of India's diversity, and a lot more needs to be done in terms of addressing the way in which WhatsApp is being weaponized and is being used to spread misinformation.
Right. So Ty, just to pick on that, Ty, so Shalini said that WhatsApp is actually doing something at the institutional level in terms of campaigns and blocking. Have they been active in Brazil as well?
After the election was over, the election was over October 2018, and WhatsApp took some actions during the campaign, not during the campaign, sorry, after the campaign, because there was an unprecedented volume of misinformation during the campaign. Just to be clear, WhatsApp that didn't have until the beginning of this year an office in Brazil. So basically, if something went wrong here, the electoral justice or any kind of NGO or social society organization journalists had to reach out to the United States in order to figure out what actions should be made. So we didn't have anyone to talk directly in order to try to figure out solutions to tackle misinformation, for instance. This is new. They have now a person to assess this kind of problem in Brazil, but every step is very small. They didn't, like in India, run any kinds of massive anti-disinformation and misinformation campaigns. It's something that they are still trying to figure out how to handle. And it is a problem because the misinformation crisis is way faster than any kinds of steps that these companies, not only WhatsApp, but most companies, most digital companies are taking against misinformation.
So yeah, so maybe we can switch to then sort of the response, because I know in the Indian case, I know I was reading about just, troops of actors and singers going around the country sponsored by WhatsApp to spread that message. I guess we're not seeing that in Brazil, unfortunately. Maybe start with you, Ty, because Shalini, rather, I knew, Ty mentioned something about the challenge of, lack of trust in institutions and increased trust on channels like WhatsApp. I think that must be a challenge then for journalists and media to figure out how to express, how to respond. So I know, Shalini, you were involved in a project around that. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your background and role in that, and how that worked, and then hear from Ty about, your similar efforts on your end.
Yes. So the general elections recently concluded in India. The elections took place between April and May of this year. They were also popularly called the WhatsApp election because of the way the app was used in the general election this year. The catchment cells of political parties was in millions, and vast resources were used to mastermind the use of the platform for spreading political propaganda. The project that I worked on during the time of the election was called Checkpoint. This was designed as a research project here at Proto. And Checkpoint used a tip line on WhatsApp to crowdsource data using the WhatsApp Business API. For this project, we used Check, a platform that was developed by Nidan. And Check was integrated with WhatsApp to manage the workflow and to send back verification reports to people. So how it worked was that the tip line was publicized by WhatsApp at the beginning of the election. And users across the country could send in queries in the form of rumors that they wanted us to verify, the Checkpoint team to verify. It was a team of analysts and researchers who were crowdsourcing the data and were also using open source verification tools for verifying queries that were within the scope of the project. So over the period of the election between early April and till the 24th of May, which is when the results were declared in India, the checkpoint tip line received over 80,000 messages. The tip line was responding to messages in 5 Indian languages. These were Hindi, Bengali, Telugu, and Hindi, English, Bengali, and Telugu, and Malayalam, which covered many states of North and South India and some parts of Eastern India as well. So the steps that the project followed were that the data was collected through the tip line. The data in terms of the messages that were received were then structured and organized for research, and the checkpoint team responded to messages that could be verified using open source verification tools. The responses were sent out to users through the same tip line, and the responses informed users if the message sent by them was true or false or misleading or inconclusive. And when the message could not be verified, because if it was an opinion and not a fact that could be verified, or if it was not related to the election, then the users got a message saying that their message or the query that they sent was out of scope for the project. So this is how the team worked during the time of the election. What we saw during the election on WhatsApp was a lot of visual content, much more than videos, and actually no audio content, or very few audio content, but a lot of memes, a lot of photographs, screenshots and collages that were received by the tip line. There were few videos and only some text messages that we received. But there were a lot of old photographs that were in circulation. So including photographs and images that had been debunked in the past, which came into circulation again. And as I was saying, there were more facts, more opinions sometimes, and less facts. It's difficult for us to verify the information at times. Some of the key political leaders were targeted throughout the elections. So the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition at that time, a couple of state chief ministers were, their images or content related to them could be seen a lot during the 2 months when the tip line was active. And we also saw a range of manipulation strategies that were used. So sometimes we saw that credible media sources were used. So logos of media organizations were used, or sometimes templates from other newsrooms were used to spread misinformation, to share misinformation. Sometimes there were verified social media accounts of important people on which these messages could be seen, or quotes or statements by celebrities or political leaders that were seen. So all the messages that we received, the 80,000 plus messages that we received, are now part of a database that is being analyzed to understand the spread of misinformation during large events of public interest like the election. And the checkpoint team is also analyzing how this kind of large misinformation database of text, images, and some video links can also help us to understand the patterns of misinformation across issues, languages, and regions.
Right. So you said you had like something like 80,000 messages out of a community of 400 million users. Do you think that's any sort of representative sample that it indicates how big the problem is, right?
Yeah, it is a huge problem, um, and also, I mean, even though the tip line was responding to messages in 5 languages, we received messages in various other languages from various regions, which goes to say that many more people wanted Checkpoint to verify rumors from their regions in their languages about many other issues as well, which were not only related to the election or to politics.
Right. So Ty, so based on, did you have any sort of activity like that in Brazil as well, either before or after? Maybe not at the level of Checkpoint, but that kind of more active attempt by media to intervene and respond?
Yes, we had, we have a representative amount of fact-checking organizations in Brazil. I run one, but we had a coalition of fact-checkers called Comprova in Brazil that united more than 20 media outlets such as newspapers, TV stations, radios, and they Aos Fatos was an institutional partner to them as well, and together we ran some collaborative efforts. For instance, during the election day, and actually during the election weekend, which means Saturday and Sunday, the election day in Brazil is usually in the first and last Sunday of October. We run collaborative efforts in order to fight misinformation during those days. We knew that by the patterns we were seeing during the election season, the official election season, it's like 2-3 months before the first round in Brazil. And we were seeing where, as we would get near the election day, a raise in the amount of misinformation that was being spread. So we only suppose that in the weekend before the day of the election, we would have a huge amount of misinformation regarding the election itself. So it happened in the first round. It was chaos, mostly because not only because we had a massive amount of misinformation. We, as a collaborative, as fact checkers, we fact check more than 20 pieces of misinformation that were popular during the first round, and it had massive amounts of engagement and share that would reach more than 5 million users on Facebook. At least we don't have numbers for our WhatsApp because of the nature of the app, but it was chaos, even because our institutions weren't how can I say, they didn't plan ahead and didn't have immediate answers in order to tackle the problem. So if we had some kind of fraud accusation in a very isolated place in Brazil is a continental country, we would have, it would be really tough to fact check if that was true, and we didn't. The institutions didn't provide us any specific help in order to tackle that. So yes, we run many kinds of fact-checking activities, but we also run, it wasn't such a large collaborative effort as in India. I feel that in India it was more organized, even because of the nature of the journalism landscape in Brazil, but also because in India, I suppose that the misinformation crisis is much deeper, because even though we have problems in Brazil, there were issues in India such as violence, deaths, and lynching and everything that we didn't have records of. We don't have records of this here.
Mm-hmm. I think you were sharing also, Ty, some information on a couple of slides. You want to maybe go through some of that based on your research? Maybe give us a better context of.
Yes, let me share here. We have run a survey. Let me see. I have to open it up again, just a second.
In the meantime, actually, we have a quick question. Maybe you can think about. We can talk about a little more later. There are a couple of questions from the panelists about, given the size of the audience and the size of the issue, what are your thoughts on, digital literacy efforts as a way to help people understand, the power of these networks and the spread of information, and what role sort of media organizations might have in that. And we can talk about that a bit later if you want to, Ty, but something to think about for later in the hour. Ty?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd like to answer that for me, not to forget about it, but media literacy is something that we have to develop ways to make people try to verify things by themselves and stimulate critical thinking. And we tend to think that media literacy is just valuing news outlets and not believing what you receive on WhatsApp. But it's not about it. It's about trying to figure out what is propaganda and what is journalism, identify trustworthy sources, understand why authoritative arguments are more valuable than regular people ones or common sense ones. So it's difficult because we tend to think that education is a solution for everything. And education is something that is built and it has, at least in places in Brazil, it has to have different approaches because we have cultural differences inside the country. And it's a medium or long-term investment. Meanwhile, we have to have more immediate actions from the digital platforms in order to improve the ambient where people inform themselves. I'd like to show some data here because it shows exactly what I'm saying about trust and habits on consuming news. Last year in mid-October, or it was in the middle of the election season in Brazil, Aos Fatos, in partnership with ICFJ, ran a survey among more than 2,000 interviewees about news intake in Brazil and how people consume the news. And news, you can think about everything because people tend to think that news is something much more broad than what journalists think. So we found out that most people in Brazil, 33%, consume news primarily from social media. So it is a problem, right? Because people are not accessing the first page of a newspaper. They are not going to news websites so often. Only 25% do that in order to receive news, to read the news, or to perhaps only 25%. They tend to think that online news websites are more trustworthy for them to receive news. So messaging apps are 24%. 24% are perhaps on WhatsApp or Messenger or other kind, Telegram or other kinds of encrypted closed networks receiving news, which we don't know what it is and what they consider as news. So we have this kind of data, which leads us to think about how can people consume news on messaging apps. We asked them if they used the links that were that accompanied some kinds of contents inside WhatsApp, and people said that for only 44% of the interviewees said that they only clicked the link sometimes, and 24% said they clicked the link never. So basically, they were only consuming information, what they did consider news, without the proper context. And it is a problem because, well, perhaps WhatsApp is not the most suitable place for you to get your news, as we have discovered. Because basically, people that consume news inside WhatsApp, they tend to consume news through images and memes, which is problematic because what is information through images and memes? 53% said that they share information through images and memes. 42% said they consume information through videos, and 35% through audios. Only 25% said they used links or URLs to see the news. And given that we don't have a robust presence of news outlets in Brazil using WhatsApp, it is a problem. So it is only wise to suppose that people who are not reading the news, trustworthy informations that they should have, that they should read. So it's, yes.
So go ahead. I want to sort of stop on this issue of images and memes. There was actually a question from a panel, from an attendee in India who was talking about exactly this, is how do you increase outreach to people who may not be literate or have limited literacy skills? And I suspect, that may be part of the image of, besides the fact that images are fun, they're also maybe possibly more powerful for people with limited literacy. And I wonder if Shalini, you're seeing similar trends on the Indian side of more visual information versus text information.
Yes, there's definitely more visual information that we saw during the election, and even otherwise on WhatsApp. Memes and images are very commonly shared. I agree that for a lot of Indians who are non-literate, and that's a large population of India that's non-literate, people in small towns, rural areas, using memes sometimes jumps the literacy barrier and is able to provide information. It's also more fun, like you said. And so I feel that even newsrooms and fact checkers should be doing that, using more visual content in what they put out, especially on WhatsApp and other social media.
Yeah, so speaking of visual content, I think you've got some examples there.
Yes, because we've realized that people were sharing more images and memes, we tried in Aos Fatos to develop different formats for us to present our fact checks. I mean, it will never be as appealing as when you are. We have now some kind of fight. It's more of a dispute between propaganda and journalism, right? And propaganda is more appealing. It appeals to your emotions. It sometimes is beautiful, or sometimes use beautiful pictures or something that, even if it's not that beautiful, or even if it's not that aesthetically sophisticated, it makes you feel something. And well, journalism, not that much. Journalism is boring. Data is boring. And most of all, being corrected is really boring. And people tend to react in a very aggressive way when they are being corrected, right? Because people want to be sure of their convictions. They don't want to be antagonized. So the polarization, it makes it even worse. So we try to develop more smart ways for us to use, to continually use political, reliable data in the social networks. And social networks, which are also not only WhatsApp, but also Twitter, Instagram. Instagram is a very important platform now. People are, the political debate is migrating to Instagram this in 2019 in Brazil. So we felt that we should build some nice pieces of content with images. So basically, we are drawing HQs like cartoons to explain some facts to people. We are trying to organizing small pictures, some data regarding what politician says and if says and whether it is right or wrong. We use cartoons such as this as well. So basically, if people didn't understand, we will be drawing to help them. Cartoons, they drive a high level of engagement on social media. So it is good because it appeals to every age. Young people that are on Instagram, for instance, they like it very much because it's more appealing to them. And it's just as appealing as a piece of propaganda. Or, I don't know, it is supposed to be more appealing as a piece of propaganda. So it's something that people can share more on WhatsApp, where we know that they share more pictures and memes. And this is an example of coverage, because we've been covering politics and fact-checking and sending messages to our readers through Instagram. So we had to think about ways to make people read more our fact checks and engage more with our fact checks. So we basically don't rely on them clicking the link. We display it on Instagram, the most important information that we have to publish regarding our fact checks, and we use images in order to them to share and engage themselves with verified information. It's been really efficient. It's been something that it has an impact. It's difficult to measure, but it's some kind of benchmark, and we want to see other media outlets doing things like this in the future.
Yeah, so maybe now let's spend, I want to leave some time to answer some questions, but sort of looking ahead, now that you have these experiences behind you, both with the election and otherwise, and also both Taya and Jelani with experimenting with things like better graphics and better ways of communicating, what do you see as sort of the next challenges, and do you think you're prepared to respond? And I think, Taya, you mentioned issues of like health issues, which I assume may be showing up in India. So what do you think are the next steps to do the kind of work you're doing?
I want to talk about media literacy, and because you started talking about that, and in the context of India, and this is also looking at the next steps or some important steps that need to be taken in the Indian context. We know that a lot of first generation internet users on WhatsApp are unable to discern truth from what is fake or false. And a reason for that is there is very little exposure to independent media that people with low levels of literacy, people in rural areas, small towns have. And very often local news and local media is also highly compromised in India. And it caters to the same populist sentiment. So there need to be initiatives for this audience, audiences with low levels of literacy in small towns and rural areas. I also feel that we need to look at some local solutions to some of these problems. For example, when we think of designing fact-checking initiatives, or verification projects. We need to take into fact that misinformation thrives on existing social cleavages. There are hate crimes in areas where communities are polarized. There are lynchings in areas where there is a fear of people from outside or people who are not from that region. So some of the initiatives that are designed need to take into account the local context of that area and also look at local solutions to these problems. For example, I was reading about an initiative in Western Africa that has used priests to talk about the spread of Ebola virus and some of the practices that people need to stop. And that was a very powerful way in which the spread of misinformation around Ebola was controlled to some extent. So what can be those solutions in the Indian context, in the Brazilian context? Media literacy interventions and educational interventions need to take these into account. And then even newsrooms, I feel that newsrooms need to use social media. There's no denying that. A lot of people are consuming news on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and newsrooms need to think of tailoring content towards mobile formats, using cartoons, like Ty said, using humor in the work that they put out and some of the content that they put out. Even fact checkers need to do that. Infographics to inform readers, to use information in very efficient and brief manner to put out the message. And I think only when newsrooms and fact-checking initiatives are able to take into account all these factors, can we make media literacy initiatives more effective in coming years? Yeah.
Curious, Ty, your thoughts about that too, because I know Shalini was talking about this issue of like social cleavages, which I assume exist in Brazil, but maybe not to the extent of violence. And I'm curious how, if you have any questions about that or thoughts about that.
I feel that it is more important for us now to be more present on social medias and closed social platforms such as WhatsApp. And it's really difficult for very good reasons, which are these apps, they weren't built for broadcasting, even though they are being weaponized for broadcasting propaganda. So if you want to be a good player inside WhatsApp, you will be needing, you don't have that much resources such as automatization of contents, so it is difficult for you to send content to a large amount of people, of readers. Now we have lists of transmission at our photos and we have some 1,000 readers that receive daily our fact checks, but it's really difficult to escalate this kind of activity. It's really difficult to make something go viral without having a huge amount of investment. And when I say investment, it means that we have to work with influencers and make them be more present inside WhatsApp, be inside public groups, sending verified information. This kind of thing is not something that is trivial. It demands investment, it demands strategy. And most newsrooms, they don't have the resources to do that. Besides that, platforms have to build native programs of fighting misinformation. I believe that WhatsApp should have some sort of built-in search engine in order for you to reach out to some kind of platform to verify information. For instance, it would be ideal for our photos if we could, just like Google has its search engine. It would be really nice if in a search engine inside WhatsApp they could surface through some kind of keywords, fact checks about a subject, for instance. It would be nice if we could develop a chatbot that would answer people inside WhatsApp if something is true or false. We have the technology, we have the technology for that, but its implementation is really difficult. And everything that represents automation on WhatsApp, they see it with a grain of skepticism. It's difficult to work there.
So we have about 3 or 4 minutes left, and I wonder sort of if either of you have questions for the other one, whether Ty or Shalini, if you have questions for each other as a way of closing out. I think we've dealt with most of the questions from the audience. Somebody did ask about trolls and bots, whether that's a phenomenon on messaging apps as well as other networks. I guess
in India, I know that WhatsApp has been blocking suspicious accounts, and there was a report that said that 2 million suspicious accounts have been blocked by WhatsApp because they were suspicious, and WhatsApp monitors accounts at various levels at the time when people register, and then when messages are sent, and also for bot activity. So that I know is something that WhatsApp monitors in India and controls.
No. And Ty,
In Brazil, we had during the election last year, WhatsApp acted and deleted more than thousands of users that were reportedly sending spam. We haven't heard from them which kind of spam was, what kind of activity was that, and how they get to weaponize WhatsApp in order to send spam. We know for a fact that if you are a regular user in WhatsApp, if you are a normal person or an institution, it's really difficult to send spam through WhatsApp, which make us think about data exposures. So basically, what means someone bought data from users from elsewhere, and they send spam, politically motivated messages to people that didn't solicit that. This is irregular activity for WhatsApp, and it's in buying such data numbers is illegal in Brazil. So it happens. I don't know if it still happens. I believe so, but we haven't heard from WhatsApp these kind of measures for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we've got about a minute to go. So any last sort of questions or thoughts for each other?
Well, I think that we all know that technology is an amplifier, and technology has been used in the context of WhatsApp in India and Brazil to spread misinformation, to amplify existing kind of cleavages, social cleavages. And I feel that as media people, as fact checkers, as people who engage with ways to combat misinformation, we need to be able to use the same technology to address this problem, and through various ways, whether it's the kind of work that Ausfatos is doing, or the kind of collaborations that we've seen, or projects like Checkpoint. There are various ways in which one can address this problem.
All right. Ty?
I only believe that it's not a matter of a specific platform. It's not its role to tackle misinformation as if it was an island, you know. If you're, for instance, Facebook, and you start tackling misinformation there, misinformation will go to other platforms. So it is really important for platforms to form some kind of coalition or have common policies to tackle misinformation. Because if something is done by Facebook, it will go to Twitter, and if Twitter does something, it will go to WhatsApp, and if WhatsApp does something, it will go to Instagram, and then we'll have always a place where misinformation will grow. So every platform has to take it seriously.
That's a great place to end. So I want to thanks Ty and thank you Shalini, and thanks again to Dow Jones and Craig Newmark for sponsoring this webinar series. We'll be back in September. Remember the date? Looking at our producer here. Huh?
I think it was the 24th.
I think it's the 21st. Well, anyway, you can check out on the ICFJ website. And if you have any more questions or comments that we didn't manage to get to, please, I think this recording will be up on the IJNet Facebook page. And you can always find us on Twitter with the hashtag IJNetLive. We look forward to hearing from you. All right, thanks everybody. And thanks, Diane Shalini. We'll see everybody soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.